Hey everybody, I'm making a wrap-up video to this whole Bible and 18th Dynasty connections I've been showing you. I have shown you many. It's very clear to me where the Old Testament and many of the stories came from. They were taken out of the 18th Dynasty in Egypt. They were kind of changed just a tad. The chronological order was changed a little bit, but they all got put into the Bible to tell a story, and there is a purpose for that. And I'm going to tell you why the reason the Old Testament, and especially the Moses story, was written. And it had to do with a time in Egypt that really it makes sense to why the Bible was taken out of this time. Now, the time of Tuthmosis IV, who I believe is the biblical Moses. The reason why the plagues are related to this time and this great upheaval and this great look to a God, why Tuthmosis IV was made a Messiah of the New Age, and that could have been actually at his own doing, but I think this all relates to the story of Santorini, and that is at the core of it. And dating this time of the explosion of Santorini, the supervolcano, this is an article talking about Manoah and the island of Crete, and it all says that these came to an end at 1450 BC, the time of the eruption of Santorini, which it says was 4 times more powerful than Krakatoa. This would have rained great devastation on Egypt. And you have to understand the people of Egypt and their subconscious have these tales still of Atlantis. You remember Plato, who was schooled at the mystery schools of Egypt. He talked about the destruction of Atlantis, and he also talks about times besides this devastation of Atlantis that the so-called world was destroyed, and these cataclysms that not only happened many times in the past, but will happen many times in the future. We had this eruption of Santorini, and the people in Egypt were freaking out. You can imagine the Pharaoh at this time, who was Thutmose IV, probably would have gotten a lot of heat. Pharaohs were looked at as divine, and if all of this devastation was being wrought on Egypt at this time, people were looking to the Pharaoh for some answers and for some hope. And this is what I believe happened at a special day in Giza about 3,500 years ago. Tuthmosis IV, now you remember the story of Moses. People are still worshiping the golden calf, which I believe represents the age of Taurus. And Moses is about to say, hey, we need a change. We can't do that anymore. And I think that is related to the story of Santorini and this new thinking that Thutmose IV instilled, and that was the worship of Aten. He tried to change things. He gave the people of Egypt, they were looking for hope, and I believe he put on a special show at the Great Pyramid where he revealed the laws of God to the people. And I have shown you how the 10 Commandments are exactly related to the tablets of Thoth, or the laws of Thoth written in the Book of the Dead. And this devastation of Santorini, I believe, was the reason why Thutmose IV did something at the Great Pyramid. And it says here in the book of Exodus, the Lord descended to the top of Mount Sinai and called Moses to the top of the mountain. So Moses went up, and he received these laws of God, which are exactly like the text of Thoth. Moses, I believe Thutmose IV could have put on this fabulous, extravagant show where the people of Egypt were seeing the Pharaoh receiving these laws of God. It talks about him talking to the, burning bush, and there's many different ways you can interpret that, but I believe the people were looking for a special hope They had all this destruction that was being wrought on Egypt. This is the reason why the story is brought up in the Bible. It is the reason why Revelations, these stories about hail and locust and darkness, they all are a reimagining of this time in ancient Egypt where it looked like the world was coming to an end. This was the biggest devastation of the past maybe 4,000 years on Earth, and that can be debated. But this is the reason why the Bible was written, or why it took the story of this time, because Tuthmosis IV was revealing these secret teachings of God, which only the mystery schools divulged to the elite and the kings of Egypt, or the pharaohs of Egypt. Only the elite were privy to the information, while Thutmose IV gave the people the laws of God to give them hope, to say, hey, this is the way you live your life, and God is not going to be, angry with you. He is now, but if you live this way, this is not going to happen again. And I believe this is why the Bible took this story and tells you, hey, you have to live with gratitude. Every day is precious. You don't know when, great devastation could be brought on earth again. It's happened many times. You have to live with gratitude. You have to love your neighbor. You have to live a good life. And stuff like this, the eruption of Santorini, which almost devastated your whole world, is not going to happen again. That's the reason for the Bible. That's where it came from. It was this time of great devastation in ancient Egypt. And Thutmose IV was the pharaoh. He was considered divine by the Egyptians. He gave them the law of the word of God that were written by the finger of Thoth himself. He gave the people the laws of God. That's why Thutmose IV was considered divine. That's where the biblical Moses comes from. And that is why Thutmose IV faces on the Sphinx, is because he was considered this divine God, this Messiah of the new age of Aries, who was going to bring hope to the people after this devastation of Santorini. Hope you thought this was interesting. Have a nice day.